before leaping out, rolling and launching a dagger towards the approaching Beastmen warriors as he comes upright. Parkour! After the successful beast hunt, Srok Skyreaver leads his expedition back towards base camp, meeting up with a small elite patrol along the way. However, his trespass has roused the beast pride. With a terrible cry, the beast lord Hurub the Siegebreaker leads his warriors out of the tree line, bellowing a challenge to the Ratmen. We have 300 points of Ratmen, led by Srok Skyreaver, the Battlemaster, who carries his hunting spear, and his rat companion, Otis, who has taken a bit of a chill pill since the last rules update. We have Dr. Ratnik, the champion with a toxin gun, 3 units of warriors, one of which has taken control of the Death Roller after its previous pilot was eviscerated, and the elite patrol, 3 storm veterans with great weapons, a grenadier with toxin bombs, and a night scout with throwing daggers. The 300-point strike force of the Beastmen is led by Hurub, the Beast Lord, and his bodyguard of 6 warriors. Zizu Mini-Shot, the Huntmaster, carrying a triple short bow, leads 3 raiders, a unit of hunters with spears, and a unit of hunters with dual hand weapons and a sergeant. The field itself opens up from the woods on the right with scattered trees and long grass, providing cover and difficult terrain. The scenario today is Clash of Heroes. Our heroes will be looking to challenge their enemies to one-on-one duels, gaining boatloads of victory points if they win. The Beastmen deploy coming out of the woods on the right, Zizu leading the hunters and the raiders on the left flank, while Hurub leads the warriors up the centre. The spear-armed hunters move to shadow the Ratmen Death Roller. Speaking of which, the Ratmen deploy spread out along the left, Dr. Ratnik and Srok in the centre, with the warriors and veterans spread wide, and the grenadier and scout hanging on the flanks. Let's roll for the first turn, black for the Ratmen and red for the Beastmen. Double 4s, reroll. Double 5s, reroll. There we go, the Ratmen take it with a 6. The sacrificial brave warriors in green lead the way, rushing forward on the Ratmen's right flank, and the Beastmen warriors bound towards their prey. Alternating back and forward on the Ratmen's left, warriors from both sides move into position. Srok advances up the centre towards the Beast Lord, confident of adding another beast to his trophy collection. Hurub rushes forward to meet him, bellowing a heroic challenge, which Srok readily accepts. The warriors on both sides scramble out of the way, making room for the duel of honour. Both sides continue their advance, the storm veterans for the Ratmen moving up to support the common Ratmen, and the endless Beastmen warriors surge forward. Dr. Ratnik creeps forward into the long grass, popping his head up and firing a shell from his toxin gun towards the warriors ahead of him. The poisonous shell strikes the ground behind them, bursting into a cloud of gas, but causing no harm. The spear-armed hunters lope up the centre, their lean forms unhampered by the long grass. The night scout slinks forward, nimbly passing through the grass without a trace, before leaping out, rolling and launching a dagger towards the approaching Beastmen warriors as he comes upright. Parkour! All style and no substance, however, as the dagger is swallowed by the grass before him. The Beastmen raiders begin to loose their arrows, the first flying towards the green Ratmen warriors. The arrow strikes, remaining quivering in the raised shield of the Ratmen. Following Dr. Ratnik, the grenadier makes his way into the long grass. He shakes his toxin bomb, agitating and mixing the chemicals inside it, before lobbing it high towards the approaching warriors. It's shaken a little too much though, and bursts in the air at the height of its arc, where the toxic gas is dispersed by the wind. With just Beastmen units left, the raiders continue to loose arrows towards the approaching warriors. Their 2 arrows go wide, and the Huntmaster, Zizu Mini-Shot, moves up to show them how it's done. Staying back, out of charge range of course. Knocking 3 arrows to his triple short bow, he draws and looses towards the warriors. 2 of the arrows pass between them to disappear into the grass behind, but the final arrow slips under a Ratman's raised shield, striking him in the abdomen and causing him to drop squealing. Finally, the dual weapon hunters rush forward, eager to carve their way through some Ratmen. Turn 1 resulted in a lot of moving and a lot of ineffective shooting, though the Beastmen have taken first blood, and the epic duel between Srok and Hurub has commenced. The Ratmen take the lead on turn 2 and charge the dual weapon hunters before they can act. Cutting out from behind their shields, the hunters are too nimble for them and weave out of the way, before counterattacking in a whirl of blades. Daggers and claws swirl around the Ratmen, coming from all directions. Where a shield blocks one strike, 2 more land. 1 Ratman is killed, and the last drops to the ground, stunned. The warriors on the Beastmen right charge out of the long grass at the red Ratman, swinging both cleaver and shield in a furious assault. Both strikes are on target, but both are deflected by Ratman shields, leaving the Beast Warrior open. 2 of the Ratmen are occupied with defence, but the third seizes the opening and slides his blade into the warrior's side. Distracted by the other 2 Ratmen, the Beast Warrior doesn't see it coming and falls, moaning, to the ground. Tracking the dual weapon hunters, the Grenadier shakes another toxin bomb, a little less furiously this time, and lobs it towards the gathered Beastmen. It's a direct hit, and the bomb bursts into a cloud of toxic gas among the hunters, who, intent on carving up the final Ratman warrior, are caught completely unaware. 2 immediately fall to the ground to swiftly expire, while the sergeant falls to his knees, choking and stunned. Seeing the beast's left flank collapsing, one of the warriors charges forward at a Storm veteran, cleaver swinging in a furious attack. The Storm veteran weaves aside, and the cleaver catches nothing but air. As he sidesteps, the Storm veteran unleashes a cut towards the warrior's unprotected right side, landing a heavy blow that leaves the warrior stunned on the ground. With a disdainful flourish of his blade, the Storm veteran finishes the stunned warrior with a downward thrust. One of the Beastmen raiders is incensed by his action and looses an arrow towards the veteran, but the poor shot goes wide. The second Storm veteran moves forward and, in an act of swift mercy, finishes the choking hunter sergeant with a coup de grace. While the veteran is distracted, another bestial warrior charges him from behind. Swinging out with 2 furious attacks, the veteran spots the blade out of the corner of his eye and dives aside, narrowly avoiding the cleaver. He sweeps out with his own blade as he goes, but in the heat of the action, his swing is wide and the warrior backs up. Dr. Ratnik spots movement in the grass as the spear-armed hunters move forward. Reloading his toxin gun, he takes careful aim and fires. Despite the long grass, the shot is good, and the shell strikes one of the hunters, detonating in a burst of toxic gas. Caught unprepared, 2 of the hunters immediately drop, while the third lies wheezing on the ground, stunned. Another beast warrior charges out of the long grass. Its shield sweeps high over a Ratman's head, but its cleaver swings low, catching the Rat warrior and cutting him in 2. The remaining Ratmen strike back, but slowed from their first fight and shocked at the brutality before them, their swords catch naught but air as the beast warrior disengages. The third Storm veteran charges the warrior as it moves back, snapping his greatsword forward. The beast steps aside as the blade passes inches from his face before chopping out with his own cleaver, but the Ratman swiftly recovers from his miss and backs out of reach. Backing up the outnumbered warrior, another charges the Storm veteran, swinging out with his spiked shield and cleaver. The veteran ducks and weaves aside, avoiding the attacks, before cutting out with his own, but the beast warrior sidesteps before backing away warily. Encouraged by the veteran's presence, the red warriors lunge towards the beastmen, though their hearts are not in it and their swords stop short of their target. The beast warrior chops out with a backhanded swing, but the Ratmen are already backing away from the fearsome warrior. The final beastman warrior charges around the long grass at the tiring Storm veteran. The veteran avoids the shield swing with a sidestep and beats aside the warrior's cleaver with his sword. Using the momentum of the parry, his greatsword spins wide over his head before dropping towards the warrior's neck. The blade crashes into the warrior's pauldron, delivering a mighty blow that knocks the warrior off its feet, stunned, but not out. The Night Scout Naruto runs through the long grass, pouncing on the closest warrior, daggers seeking bestial flesh. One dagger is wide, and the other is turned at the last moment by the warrior's heavy shield, as the Night Scout backflips out of reach of the warrior's countercut. Drawing another triple shot back to his ear, the Huntmaster releases towards one of the Ratmen veterans. Two of the arrows go wide, the third strikes, but is deflected by the Ratman's armour. Avoiding the dueling arena, the blue warriors and the Death Roller shift around behind the action on the Ratman's left flank. Shaking off the effects of the gas, the remaining spear hunter rises unsteadily to his feet. Seeking to take advantage of the longer reach of his weapon, Srok circles the long grass, spear held towards the Beast Lord, preparing to receive his charge. And with a bellow of fury, Hurub attacks. He knocks aside Srok's spear tip and closes the distance, though his furious charge has been blunted. Hurub swings out with his cleaver and bullies the smaller Ratman with his shield. His blows hammer the Ratman Battlemaster, powering through his defence to batter him within his armour. Bruised but not out, Srok chokes up on his spear, thrusting wildly around the Beastman's huge shield. The point catches, and Srok presses the attack, forcing Hurub to back away, his armour stopping the blow from penetrating. Wincing, Srok readies himself for the next charge, while Hurub smashes his cleaver into his shield over and again, bellowing loudly at the Battlemaster. The last two raiders in the woods move up to spot the Ratman veterans. The first releases his arrow towards the closest Storm veteran, but the arrow is wide of his target. The second moves to spot the furthest veteran and looses. His arrow on target, but cut from the air at the last second by the Ratman's sword, on guard after the previous shower of arrows fell around him. And that's the end of turn 2. Things have gone terribly for the Beastmen. Their units largely fumbling their charges and being punished by the Ratman counterattacks and poisoned ranged weapons. The duel, however, is going in the Beastmen's favour, with Hurub dominating Srok in the initial encounter. While Hurub continues to bellow and posture, Srok spots an opening and seizes the initiative. He leaps forward, spear seeking the Beast Lord's heart. The tip lands, skids up Hurub's cuirass, and plunges deep into a gap beneath his collarbone, stopping only when the ornamental guard hits flesh. Hurub bellows in surprise and rage. His spiked shield slams upright into the earth like a tombstone, his arm no longer able to bear the weight. And roaring, he delivers a mighty swing of his cleaver. Srok rips his spear free and ducks under the sweeping blade as it sails over his head. But as Hurub overbalances and stumbles around his stationary shield, he unleashes a deadly backhand, the spiked false edge snapping Srok's head back and sending him sailing 3 feet in the air, where his spear and shield clatter to the ground beside him. Otis shrieks in alarm and rushes to his broken master, as Hurub roars his victory, cleaver held high above his head, proclaiming his dominance for all to hear. Victory in the duel nets the Beastmen 1 victory point for killing an enemy hero, and a further 2 for that hero being killed as part of a duel, giving them 3 in total. Dr. Ratnik cries out in alarm and horror as his noble patron falls, and loading another toxic shell, fires towards the victorious Beast Lord. The shell caresses the tips of the long grass, before striking Hurub in the chest and detonating. His armour absorbs the brunt of the impact, but breathing heavily after the duel, he inhales a lungful of the toxic gas. His victory cries are cut short as he begins to choke, and Hurub the Siegebreaker falls to the ground, glassy-eyed and foaming at the mouth. That despicable act of dishonourable treachery nets the Ratmen their first victory point, as an enemy hero falls. Shaking his head to clear the ringing, the stunned Beastman warrior rises to his feet. Their numbers are growing thin. On the Beastman's left flank, the lone warrior circles the red cloaked Storm veteran to finish the final blue Ratman warrior and even up the unit numbers. Somewhat. With the way clear, the Storm Veteran leaves the Beastman warrior for his companion and charges the archers loosing arrows in their direction. He snaps out a cut towards the raider's head and torso, but at the last moment the raider ducks away, making room by tapping the flat of the blade with his bow and cutting out with a dagger on his hip. He's miles away though, and the dagger does little more than cause the veteran to step back. Irritated by the energetic little Night Scout, one of the warriors on the right charges it, cleaver cleaving. The first swing is wide, but the second furious sweep looks good, until the black-clad rodent bends over backwards, matrixing out of the way. As his hands touch the ground behind him, the scout rolls into a spin, slashing out with his knives. One strikes, but it's deflected off the crease on the beastman's thigh, and the warrior backs away from the whirl of blades. Cartwheeling back towards the grass, the scout leaps high, backflipping and spinning in the air. At the apex, he releases another throwing dagger before dropping to disappear in the long grass. The dagger strikes the shocked beastman warrior in the throat, and confused, it sinks to its knees, blood flowing freely through its fingers. Enraged at the slippery Night Scout, a second warrior charges into the grass after it, swinging wildly. The scout ducks and weaves, remaining untouchable, but his own blades are unable to find their mark. Frustrated, the warrior backs out of the grass. As the beastman warrior backs out, the red Ratmen warriors fall on it from the flank. Their swords snake out, but still wary of their mighty opponents, their half-hearted thrusts are ineffective. The beastman swings its blade out wide, causing the Ratmen to scamper back out of reach. Back on the beastman's left, a raider looses an arrow towards the warrior in their midst, but the panic shot is terrible. The second Storm Veteran falls on the lone beastman warrior, cutting out with an overhead chop. Spotting the strike out of the corner of its eye, the beastman gets its shield up in time to block the strike, then swings out towards the Ratman's torso with his cleaver. Disengaging his blade from the shield, the Storm Veteran parries the oncoming blow with a twist of the wrists and retreats to further study his opponent. Resheathing his dagger, the closest raider releases a point-blank shot at the Storm Veteran, but like his mate, the hurried shot is poor. The Ratman Grenadier shakes up another of his alchemical bombs and lobs it high towards the lone beastman warrior. It crashes to the ground at the warrior's feet, spraying him with a cloud of toxic gas. Unprepared, the warrior is overcome by the fumes and falls coughing to the ground, stunned. Zizu mini-shot the Huntmaster stalks behind the long grass and looses a barrage of arrows towards the partially hidden Dr. Ratnik. One of the arrows is well wide, while the other two are caught by and disappear into the long grass. The final Storm Veteran steps around the dazed beastman warrior and delivers a heavy cut to the creature's unprotected back. The blade bites deep and the beastman warrior falls. The final raider steps out of the woods to get a clear shot on the Storm Veteran, loosing his arrow. It sneaks past the veteran's guard, only to shatter on and be deflected off the Ratman's breastplate. Spotting his chance, the new Death Roller pilot cackles maniacally and guns the engine of his contraption. He careens through the gap between his friendly warriors and veteran to slam into the back of the only standing beastman warrior. Turning at the sound of the approaching engine, the warrior tries to dive aside, but it's caught under the spiked wheels and the vicious machine rips it apart as the wheels grind and roll onwards. Nasty. The final beastman unit is the spear-armed hunter, who, emerging from the long grass, charges the Storm Veteran threatening the raiders. Leaping high, he drives his spear out, but the Storm Veteran steps aside. As the veteran countercuts, the spear hunter ducks beneath the blade and retreats out of reach. So turn 3 ends terribly for the Beastmen, though they are up 3 victory points to 1. Because they are now below half strength, however, the Ratmen get 1 further victory point, and the remaining Beastmen have to start making morale checks. The stunned warrior automatically fails, he's gone, and then we have the remaining raiders and hunter. Starting at the bottom and working our way up, first raider fails, second one succeeds, the hunter fails, the third raider succeeds, and finally Zizu is out of there. So at the end of turn 3, with no way for the Ratmen to earn any further victory points, the remaining Beastmen withdraw with the moral victory, securing 3 points to the Ratmen's 2.